The rooster crowed late that morning. In the small village of Ensano, where red dust clung to everything and the sun showed no mercy, a young girl named Kaya sat on a worn mat outside her family's crumbling hut. Her hands trembled as she laced up the old sandals she wore every day, sandals that used to belong to her mother. Her eyes, deep as river stone, stared out into the waking world with a quiet pain. She was only 15, but life had aged her faster than the seasons could turn. Today was her last day of school. Not because she was graduating. No, Kaya was the brightest in her class. She had dreams of becoming a doctor, of healing people with nothing but skill and compassion. Her teacher once told her, "Kaya, you are like morning light, gentle, but full of promise. But promise doesn't buy medicine. Promise doesn't feed two little brothers when the cassava runs out. And promise doesn't bring back a mother who died giving birth or a father who disappeared into the city and never sent word again." So when her Auntie Biba, loud, sharp-tongued, and tired of useless girls, said, "Kaya, your dreams won't cook the pot," the message was clear. No more school, no more books. Kaya had to work. She rose, pressing her palm against her chest to steady the ache. The world felt heavy, like the gods had placed all their silence on her shoulders. She kissed her youngest brother's forehead as he slept, then turned to the narrow path leading away from the village, toward the market where she would start selling roasted maize. It was her mother's old spot. Her mother used to sing while she roasted. Kaya didn't feel like singing. As she walked, children played by the roadside, chasing chickens and laughing freely. One of them shouted, "Kaya, tell us a story later." She smiled, nodded, then looked away. She was already writing a story, but not with ink or tales. This one was being written with sacrifice. Her first customer that day was an old man with kind eyes. He bought 3 cobs and said, "You look like someone carrying something bigger than the sky." Kaya simply replied, "Maybe I am." He studied her for a moment, then whispered, "Sometimes, the sky breaks open to bless those who hold it." Kaya looked at him sharply, but he was already walking away, whistling a tune she half remembered from childhood. And just like that, something inside her stirred. By midday, the sun hung heavy in the sky like a watchful eye. The heat made the air shimmer around Kaya's little stall, where smoke rose gently from the small clay stove she had balanced on bricks. The maize was roasting well, but her thoughts burned hotter. The old man's words echoed in her head. Sometimes, the sky breaks open to bless those who hold it. What blessing could come from this? From waking at dawn to scrape by. From dreams locked in her chest like secrets too dangerous to say out loud. She shook her head and flipped a cob. Then came Marara. Marara was the kind of girl who always smelled like fresh mangoes and walked as if the earth tilted to greet her feet. She was the chief's daughter, wrapped in fine chitinge cloth and followed by whispers, some admiring, others bitter. She stopped at Kaya's stall with her usual smirk. "So this is your future now," she said, inspecting the maize like it was beneath her fingers. Kaya didn't answer. "Didn't you want to be a doctor?" Marara continued. "You were always writing in those books. Maybe write a cure for hunger." People nearby chuckled, and Kaya's cheeks flushed, not from shame, but from the effort it took to stay quiet. Marara tossed a coin onto the table without taking any maize. "Buy yourself some pride." Kaya waited until she was gone, then picked up the coin and dropped it into the small tin where she kept her earnings. She would use it, not out of spite, but survival. Every coin counted, even poisoned ones. Later, just as the market began to thin, Kaya saw a boy standing near the edge of her stall. His clothes were worn, his shoes mismatched, and his face, something about his face looked like the storm before rain. "Are you hungry?" she asked. He didn't answer, just stared at the maize with a hunger that went deeper than the belly. Kaya handed him one without asking for a coin. He took it, nodded once, and sat by the wall to eat. He didn't say thank you. But when he was done, he looked at her and said quietly, "The world watches who feeds it." Then he walked away. Another strange phrase. Another stranger. Kaya looked down at her empty basket, and for the first time in days, she felt, not lighter, but stronger. Like roots beginning to push through dry soil. That night, back home, she counted her coins, enough to buy cassava and salt. She'd still go to sleep hungry, but her brothers wouldn't. Before she laid down, She pulled her mother's old school notebook from under the mat. The pages were almost full, but she still wrote. Greater than, day 1. I am not broken. I am burning. But from the ash, something always grows. She closed the book, turned to the darkness, and whispered. Let the sky break. I'm still here. The next morning came quieter than usual. The rooster didn't crow. Even the wind held its breath. Kaya rose early, washed her face in a bowl of cold water, and packed her basket with fresh maize. Her brothers were still sleeping, curled up like small commas at the edge of her world. On her way out, something caught her eye, a folded scrap of paper tucked into the crack between the door and its frame. She stared at it a long moment before picking it up. No name, no markings, just one line written in neat, careful hand. Greater than, the fire in you was never meant to cook maize. Kaya stood frozen. She read the line again. And again. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something stranger, the feeling of being seen. Who wrote this? She looked around. The narrow footpath was empty except for a passing goat nibbling at a bush. She tucked the note into her skirt pocket and walked on. At the market, she set up her stall, but her hands felt clumsy. She burned the first cob, dropped the second. Her mind kept turning. The paper, the words, the strange boy from the day before, the old man with kind eyes. Were they connected? By mid-morning, she heard a cough behind her. She turned. It was Mr. Goma, her old schoolteacher, tall, patient, and always smelling faintly of chalk and coffee beans. He hadn't come to the market in months. Kaya, he said gently. I thought I might find you here. She straightened, suddenly conscious of the soot on her dress. He looked at her stall, then back at her eyes. Would you come see me this evening? There's something I need to show you. Why? He smiled. A tired, soft thing. Because someone's been watching the way you walk through the fire. He left without buying anything. That evening, Kaya sent her brothers to sleep early and walked quietly through the orange dusk toward Mr. Goma's home. It was a simple compound surrounded by tall banana trees and old clay pots full of herbs. He invited her in and sat her down. From a wooden chest, he pulled out a brown envelope, fat with folded paper and something heavier. He placed it in front of her. These came last week, he said. From a foundation in the city. I didn't want to give them to your aunt. I waited until you came into your own. Kaya opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside, a letter of recommendation. A handwritten essay she'd written a year ago titled, What I Will Heal. And at the very bottom, a scholarship letter. Full ride, for a school of medicine. In the city, she couldn't speak. Her throat closed with emotion. I never sent that essay, she whispered. Mr. Goma smiled. I did. I kept a copy of it. I knew the world would need to see it one day. Kaya blinked back tears. But I can't leave my brothers. Not now. He nodded. I know. But now the choice is yours. No one is forcing you to stop dreaming anymore. She clutched the letter to her chest. For the first time in years, the sky didn't feel so heavy. It felt wide, open, and maybe, full of something waiting. That night, Kaya didn't sleep. She sat on the floor, the letter spread open before her, a candle burning low. Her brothers breathed softly nearby, lost in their dreams, dreams they could have only because she carried the weight of their waking hours. She wanted this. She had always wanted this. Medicine, healing, becoming something greater than her pain. But the question loomed, at what cost? She could not leave them behind. They had no one else. When dawn broke, Kaya had made up her mind. She folded the letter and tucked it under the mat. The market would not wait. Hunger never did. But fate does not bend quietly. That afternoon, as Kaya roasted her maize, Auntie Biba stormed into the market like a whirlwind. Her wrapper flapped behind her, her lips already flaring with fury. You think you can hide things from me? She snapped, slapping a paper down on Kaya's stall. It was the letter. Kaya froze. You plan to run off to the city and leave your family in shame. Medicine. Doctor. Who will feed your brothers, Auntie Biba's voice rose, drawing attention. A few people gathered. I wasn't. I was going to talk to you, Kaya said, trembling. You think dreams raise children. You think books will cook their meals. Auntie Biba sneered. The chief has already offered something better, marriage to his cousin. He has land, cattle, he will take care of us. Kaya's heart fell like a stone into a deep well. She stared at her aunt in disbelief. That's your plan for me? It's not a plan, her aunt said coldly. It's the only path left. The market was silent. Even the birds seemed to pause. Then someone stepped forward. The strange boy from before, the one who had said nothing when she gave him maize. He looked at Auntie Biba and said, "You don't own her." Auntie turned to him, furious. "Who are you?" "I am someone who knows what freedom costs," he said simply. Kaya's eyes met his. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet. Something deeper, like two stars recognizing each other in a dark sky. Mr. Goma appeared from the crowd. "The school called me this morning," he said, voice calm but firm. "They want to know when Kaya will arrive. She has 2 weeks to decide." Auntie Biba huffed and stormed off, muttering curses under her breath. The market slowly returned to noise and movement, but Kaya remained still. Shaken, the boy turned to her. "What will you do?" "I don't know," Kaya said, voice small. He handed her a folded piece of paper. "Then read this when you're alone. It might help. That evening, Kaya waited until the boys had eaten and slept. She unfolded the paper. It read, "Greater than, you are not a fire to keep others warm while you burn to ash. You are a fire to light the way. Choose light." She stared at the words for a long time. Then she packed a small bag. And for the first time in her life, Kaya whispered a prayer for herself. The sun rose slowly over Ensano, casting long shadows across the path that led away from the village. Kaya stood at the edge of it, a small bag slung over her shoulder, her hands shaking. Her brothers were still asleep, wrapped in blankets and innocence. She had kissed them softly, whispering, "This is not goodbye. It's the beginning of everything I promised." In her pocket, she carried 2 things. The scholarship letter, now worn and creased. The second note from the boy, the one who had seen her, named her Fire, and reminded her to choose herself. The road ahead was not kind. It was lined with dust, uncertainty, and the sharp eyes of those who would never understand why a girl should dare to leave. As she stepped forward, she expected the weight of guilt to crush her. But it didn't. It followed her like a shadow. Yes, but behind that shadow walked purpose. The city was nothing like the village. Noise, steel, smoke, people who didn't look at you unless you got in their way. Kaya almost turned back more than once, but each time she touched the letter in her pocket, her spine straightened again. Her school was tall, with glass windows and books in every room. Her classmates spoke fast, wore perfume that smelled of money, and talked of things she'd only read about in borrowed books. But when it was time to answer questions, Kaya stood up, and she knew. Knew the answer, knew the logic, knew how pain shaped people and how healing didn't start in hospitals, but in understanding. She stayed, she studied, she struggled, she cried, she succeeded. 3 years passed, then 5, and one morning, Kaya returned to Ensano, not by foot, but in a modest van marked with a red cross and her name stitched into the collar of her coat. The village stared, some clapped, others whispered. Auntie Biba was older now, her voice quieter. "You came back." "I said I would," Kaya replied. "But not to stay, to build." Behind her, a small team unloaded supplies, medicine, textbooks, clean water tools. She had started a foundation. For girls like her, for children with no voice, for dreamers who needed one chance. She found her brothers, tall now, strong, and hugged them tightly. One of them whispered, "You did it." "No," she said softly. "We did. And that boy, the one who had once stood at her stall with hungry eyes. He was there, too. He had become a journalist, they said. One who wrote stories that made governments shake. One who never forgot the girl who gave him food without asking his name." He smiled at her now, proud and silent, just like before. That night, Kaya sat beneath the stars. She opened her old notebook and wrote one final line. Greater than, the cost was everything. But so was the reward. I chose the fire, and I became the light. And the sky, vast and open, whispered back. Finally, you re there. The end.